for questions, but please feel free to ask me any questions as we go along the way. Welcome, my name is Steve Kabrhel. I'm the Assistant Dean of Online Learning at the Community College of Baltimore County, that's in Maryland. Unfortunately, my co-presenter, Natalie Johnson, who's my Director of Instructional Design, was not able to attend today, so you get me for the full 25 minutes that are up here, but I do want to thank her. She might be listening virtually. I do want to thank her for putting together a lot of this presentation, and hopefully you'll be able to sort of figure out exactly what does he mean by how to do more with less, or as my famed president likes to say, try and use other people's money. So we'll try and instill exactly how we do that. So the goals for today, how can you do that by increasing communication and collaboration to support quality assurance? I'm going to talk to you a little bit how we do that using what we call our online learning coordinators and what their role is. And hopefully you get a chance, I'll probably ask some questions towards the end, but consider exactly how you might try and utilize that role to establish even more of a community than you might already have. And not just quality assurance, because obviously that's the purpose of this conference, but in terms of instructional design overall. So for the first couple of slides, I'm going to give you some history of my institution, just to give you some context of why we do what we do and the importance of this presentation. So we are, first of all, we're a Quality Matters institution. From Maryland, we were part of, for those of you that know your Quality Matters history, born out of Maryland Online. We were one of those players back in the day with that. So we're sort of by default have to be part of QM, although we love it, we absorb it, we use it all the time. My institution itself, it's 6 academic schools along with continuing education. And that actually makes up, they actually split the difference in terms of enrollments, and we'll see some of those numbers in just a minute. And each one of those academic schools has an online learning coordinator actually embedded within them. The continuing education workforce development area actually has 2 of those, and we'll see those roles in just a little bit. And as far as our online learning development hierarchy goes, so I'm the assistant dean. We have an executive dean of online learning as well. And I support both our instructional design unit, which is a director, and well, it sort of averages about 1.5 instructional designers depending on the semester that we have. Currently, we actually have 3, so I don't even know what to do with all of those riches. But I also support the LMS, and so we have our director of learning systems and our 2 Blackboard administrators. So, and that's a relatively new hierarchy for us within the last 2 years, and that also then plays a role in what we're going to talk about. Again, just to give you some context of size, overall, and this is online learning blended, this is face-to-face, we're 60,000 students divided pretty equally amongst credit and continuing education. And just to give you some numbers from last academic year, nearly 28,000 online learning enrollments. And when I group that in there, I say it's both fully online and blended as well. We put those together in terms of our numbers. Continuing education, while you can see that there's a pretty large number of sections of those online, the enrollments clearly aren't that high. And if any of you work with continuing ed and workforce development, you know they're unique in how they run their courses. We continue to see, as I suspect many of you in here do, an increase in our online and blended enrollments. For those of you that are any community college folks here currently, our enrollment overall is going down. It is certainly going down nationally. And so that's a unique feature is, well, our online enrollments are going up, and 11% over a whole year is certainly a significant number. Now, how many of those are new? That's a whole nother discussion for a whole nother time, and we can certainly get into that. We promote 63 degrees and certificates that a student could earn with us. Most of them are online, fully online. Some of them are blended. Most of them sit on the credit side of the house. A few of those, certainly continuing education. And we do, since we are subscribing to QM, 38 of those courses have gone through a full QM review. We have developed our own internal review. The last person that spoke here was talking about how they used the QM rubric to modify their own system. We did something similar. My colleagues from previous years have presented at this conference on those particular topics. So we've done 133 of those courses, individual courses that have gone through there. We've got 85 courses in development, and so As my current boss likes to say, we're trying to clean up still from the wild, wild west of course development, where it was sort of faculty willy-nilly going things across. These are the ones that I actually know of, 110 courses. I know that there's more out there, and we're still working on an audit. So I put all of those numbers together to give you sort of a context of, we have a lot to do. And the colleague of ours that was presented earlier worked at a four-year institution, and it was her and one instructional designer. So I kind of, you know, I don't want to say that we currently now have 3 instructional designers. And so I'll see when we get to where we've been in our history, given all of that size, what makes us a little bit unique. So the key for today's discussion is this. This is how you do more with less, or use other people's money, and you could probably put a little caveat onto that. So what are our online learning coordinators? And we established these online learning coordinators back in 2012. And for the credit schools, for the 6 credit schools, they are faculty members. So I, in my role as assistant dean, I oversee the group in and of itself and what they do and how they do things, but I don't supervise these faculty. So they're really embeds in the school. They know their schools well, and so they ultimately become a partner. We call them our academic partners between our units, and technically I still fall under the Office of Instruction, of which they fall as well. But it very clearly is a different unit and has been different units in the past. But to have those links and those connections in the schools is really valuable for us. And I'll get to some more specifics about exactly what their roles are, but you can see they do a little bit of everything. Now, they're not setting policies and they're not setting schedules, but they're looking and they're overseeing and they're being that person that can understand the actual schools themselves. And like I said, our institution is large. There's 450 full-time credit faculty with 1,400 adjuncts. So we're talking about a lot of communication that's necessary. So here's some requirements of our online learning coordinators. And for the past 7 or 8 years that we've had these coordinators, we've had very little turnover, which for me in my role is amazing because we keep that consistency and that narrative all the way through, and the deans themselves go to these folks for information. 3-year term that rolls, we continuously do that, and here's the other people's money piece, and for those of you that are following online, it's the reassigned time. Now, to give you some quick context, so a standard faculty member at our institution has to do 15 teaching load hours. All right, so 5 classes at 3 credits. You all sort of get the math. And it's not always the same. In science, it's different. But anyway, so it goes that way. And so they, per semester, take 6 of those 15 hours, and they use that to work with me. I have my own budget, but I don't pay for those hours. The schools will do that because they understand the benefits. That's sort of the big reveal here, is that how to do more with less is instead of hiring instructional designers, which is a challenge, and keeping them is a challenge nowadays anyway, I've got somebody that sits inside of these schools and can act in a way that instructional designers do, as opposed to taking and hiring 7 or 8 instructional designers, pairing them up with each of these schools, and then saying, here you go. We would never be able to sustain that model. But the practice of what these online learning coordinators do are sustained. So they have to be QM trained all the way through to peer reviewer. They have to have some instructional design background. And really for us, we have a 2-semester, 80-hour course development process, which we've developed over the years. To us, that's enough for instructional design background. I know a couple of them right now. One of them is definitely getting his PhD in instructional design. One has a master's in instructional systems. 4 or 5 of them have taken the Online Learning Consortium's training. So anything that, and you know, they've been teaching for years upon years. So they really get a sense of both QM and what are quality requirements in terms of online learning. And not that they have to maintain their teaching, but they obviously do because they're passionate about what they do. So I was an online learning coordinator when we started the role, before I took this on. I took this job in 2017. The coordinators began back in 2012. So I had a unique sense when I took this role of what really those coordinators would do. So I was a faculty member in biology, taught anatomy and physiology and nutrition. I became the first school's online learning coordinator. In that school, and for those of you that manage math and science or are part of math and science, you know, we're mostly rule-oriented. We like process, we like order, we like descriptions. And so it was really easy for me to say, okay, here's all these courses that we have online, you, and you. Let's pull a spreadsheet together. Here's who needs APPQMR training. Here's who needs our course development training, whatever we take. And let's get some teams together and start building institutional courses, which most people know as a master course. And people are like, okay, let's do that. So in my role then, I organized that. Now, the hierarchy, the online learning hierarchy then was much different. I had much more autonomy within my school to do what I needed to do. There was one instructional designer, there was one director of instructional design, and that was pretty much it. There wasn't really much higher level hierarchy. So it was more about keeping together with some training and pushing quality matters, and then whatever you guys did in your school, just figure it out yourselves. So I was able to really create a system of making sure that there's training, make sure there's good high quality courses. And as we started to share that amongst the other coordinators, we really got a sense of, so what does liberal arts do? And for those of you liberal arts faculty in here, you look at my math and science background and go, no, that's not how we do it. But they found their own system, and the online coordinator that serves with them now has created her own task force and individual groups within the School of Liberal Arts. And they're all taking the basis of what we do, and they're turning it into something that they can own, and the school owns themselves. Because those of you that are faculty, that are staff, that are administrators, IDs, whatever you are right here in this room and are online, you know, the faculty buy-in is the most important thing to having successful courses. And that's what we felt was really important. So as my experience as an online learning coordinator, you know, we developed the role, we developed the tasks, we participated in what ultimately became some of our online learning policies. Well, what makes sense for School of Math and Science is different from the School of Liberal Arts, which is technology, art, and design. They're all different, but can we come to some consensus? So while it certainly wasn't my role then as an online learning coordinator to make policy, I certainly had some influence, as did my colleagues, to try and say, this is what we need, you know, because we wanted to be on the forefront of what online learning was. We knew that the school itself was invested at least QM, if not trying to have some organization. And so it was really important that we figured out exactly how to make that organized. So how do we, you know, if the theory is how do you do more with less? I can tell you right now that the 6 hours that I get from them, which really translates into depending on which school, between 7 and 14 hours a month that I get from them. And one of those hours, or 2 of those hours a month, is meeting with me as a group to talk about what we need to do in pushing out our policies. So as we continue to evolve and grow our policies, we want to talk about, well, how can we participate in taking our course development training, which is long? How do we make it fit what your school needs? How do we take our facilitation training and fit and make it what it needs? They work directly with our Director of Instructional Design, Natalie, as well, in terms of course development. So we instituted this long-winded online learning plan. So the dean says these are the courses and programs we want to put online. The faculty need to be organized, and the timing of that scheduling. The coordinators are there parallel with the deans and the supervisors to say, well, this is what I know online learning needs. So let's take a look and translate to what do you folks need? And let's see if we can make that marriage work. So they go into courses and they take a look at them. Faculty will call them or instant message them and say, hey, can you jump in my course real quick and tell me why this doesn't work? So they've got knowledge of the learning management system. As I mentioned earlier, we have our own internal review process, and so they sit on reviews every single year as part of their role. And if they want to, they can certainly serve on other committees. We have an online learning advisory board. I have one representative on there. I asked that at least one of them be a faculty senate because we're very strong in our shared governance so that they get to see and hear what's happening there. Some of them have even developed their own online learning committees within inside of their school to kind of share and spread the wealth. So with the 10 minutes or so that we have remaining, I sort of want to get a sense from the room, and certainly anybody that's participating virtually. Does anybody have anything like this going on in their institutions? And would anybody be willing to share? There's a microphone that we'll have in the back. Is anybody willing to share some of their experiences?
I have a question.
Sure, and I'll take questions too. And I'll make sure for the virtual audience I repeat that question if it's not heard. There's a mic right behind you there.
I just have a real quick question about the OLCs and the IDs and what that interplay is.
Yeah.
We have a similar situation where we have online, like OLCs, and we have IDs, and I'm just wondering about that relationship and how that you make that work.
That's a great question. So like I said, from when these OLCs started, back in 2012, we had one for a long period of time. We suddenly had three for about 6 months. It went down to one again. We're now up to three. And really up until the last year and a half, our IDs were mainly focused on training, which is not where I wanted them to be. They were pushing teaching the APP QMRs face-to-face. They were pushing our course designer training, which is 80 hours. They were going through, when they go through that training, you build a course in the end, and so they were sort of following them along the way in the course design. But we weren't necessarily taking courses and saying, okay, School of Health Professions, we need this nursing course built, okay, IDs, meet with your SMEs, and let's go. We're moving to that model now. We're sort of 50-50 into it. So the interplay between the two has been a little bit of both. The OLCs don't actually do the training themselves. Separately, actually, they will come in and they will teach for something separate than their requirements for me. They'll come in and they'll teach our facilitation training course, and they'll get some extra money for that. So they really are the communicators. They're the navigators. They're the, hey, please tell Steve exactly what's happening in your school and what do you need, and let's see if we can put a schedule together. And our IDs, particularly now, they'll still conduct the training as they do, but they will sit down with a faculty member in that scenario I gave you with health professions, and they will actually work with a faculty member or a team of faculty members and actually develop a course that way. So the IDs, I'll have an OLC go, hey, Steve, we just found this course that we had no idea about. Can you have one of your instructional designers take a look at it? And I'll stick an instructional designer in there, and they'll review it for your QM, do a quick review, and then they'll do that. They'll relay it back to the OLC, who will then communicate with not just the faculty member, but potentially with the supervisors to say, hey, look, this is a really good course. You can keep it online, or we need to talk about when you're going to offer it next time. So that's a really good question. And they've really established themselves as being able to communicate amongst themselves. Certainly our director, they'll go to our director in most cases to do that. Sometimes they'll go to the OLCs, but there's a little bit of overlap in that I could ask if the IDs are busy, I could jump into an OLC and say, could you jump into that course with their permission and take a look at it and do a QM review? So while some of the duties overlap of an ID, we do want to make sure that the ID's job is this, the OLC's job is this. And I will tell you too, the deans themselves want to put more emphasis and more duties on those OLCs, but they don't want to give them any more time to be able to do that. We're conducting an LMS review, and they're like, oh, well, we want those OLCs to be the main communicators. And I went, no, find somebody else. They're already filled as it is. There was another question. Do you want to share some of your experiences here? Is the mic coming? Thank you for your question, by the way.
Hi, my name is Roz Jester from Florida Southwestern, and we have basically implemented this exact same model.
Yeah.
We're in our second semester. This is one of our e-learning coordinators.
Welcome.
We're all here, and we've recently adopted QM as our official rubric for measuring quality. Since our group of e-learning coordinators is new, one of the questions I'm hearing from the administrative team is, well, what are they doing?
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering, how did you effectively communicate with deans and the provost or other stakeholders as to why they are giving this release time?
Yeah, and that has been a challenge. So the way our OLCs actually came to being is that we had an advisory board back in 2011, 2012. And we made a recommendation to say, we need these people embedded. And so it actually went to the deans, it went to our vice president of instruction, who sent it to our shared governance, and the shared governance passed it with a set of job descriptions. And I included some jobs sort of along the way. I have business cards up here. Please take one. I'm happy to share the task. We're actually reviewing that right now for a bit of an update, but I'm certainly happy to share it. So our buy-in became, we had this part of institutional policy that these existed, and then a job description that we created then sort of after the fact, but it was sort of roughly in place. I go in my role now in terms of overseeing the OLCs themselves. I will go meet with the deans and say, here's what's going on and the broader picture. But not almost, all of the OLCs do meet with the school leaderships. So they meet when the dean calls their executive leadership meeting. They may not go every single time. They may go every other time, and they may share information there, or they may take information, or they'll meet one-on-one with the deans. So they've all, to a person, established that connection, knowing that it's institutional policy. So that tends to become a challenge. If you want to do it, it started with a grassroots effort, but then became policy, and now it filters down that they sort of understand what's happening. So my suggestion is, if you don't have it, find out how you can get that buy-in with those highest levels of the provost or vice president or whatever title they are, and then work on the OLCs. I'm lucky enough that the people that were nominated, and they were nominated by the deans, so the deans knew who were quality people that were their go-to people for online, who knew this and that, and they could have a rapport with. So that's how we actually got them in these roles. And if we need to renew, actually we did. We have one that's there. We're transitioning. I got a recommendation from the dean. We did some interviews. The dean was on the interview. He made his recommendation. We picked that person. And so they know that they can go to and have that communication. Has it been difficult sometimes? Yes, because the dean has their own agenda. They have the feedback from the faculty not liking certainly what we do sometimes, but that's really been a key to that, has been both their connection, the OLC's connection with the leadership, and also the dean's support of what I do, knowing what the importance is. For us, it's a strategic initiative to grow online learning. So we kind of have that connection baked into that. Everybody in some way, shape, or form here is, well, it's the pie in the skies to do these things. So if you can get that leadership built in, that's probably a way I might suggest it, but that's a good question. You had mentioned that the OLCs that develop communities. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Sure. The question was, can I elaborate on the communities that the OLCs have established? And not all of them have done that. Specifically in the School of Nursing, the online learning, or in the School of Health Professions, the online learning coordinator said, okay, I want to get a group of power users together that have some questions, and we're going to meet on a bi-monthly basis and talk about not just what we're trying to do in online learning, but let's hear from you and tell me, well, exactly what do you need in terms of this training, that training, or what knowledge don't you have? Let's learn a little bit more of what you need. So that's one example. We used to have, and I know we're running short of time, we used to have a group that was a faculty sort of online group, and we've taken those online learning coordinators and said, okay, why don't you announce to the entire online learning faculty that you're going to meet on this campus and talk more broadly. So it doesn't become then school-based, it becomes, in this case, it was campus-based because logistically it worked out better. And let's have 2 online learning coordinators go to a meeting. We'll call any online faculty from any school that wants to show up, and let's answer some questions. So there they serve as a communication tool from my office to say, well, here's what the Department of Online Learning is doing, and let's gather some feedback and get it. And they took their initiative on both of those instances to say, let's put something together. The third, and I'll leave with one of the third schools, she actually nudged the dean to create for each course within the discipline a committee. So like English 101 has its own committee for online learning, English 102, and so on and so on and so on. So she kind of spearheaded that because for that school with so many sections, it was easier for her to manage that when it was clustered together inside a group. So they have the autonomy to do that with the overall umbrella of you're a liaison between my office and your school, however it works best for you to navigate your both faculty and academic leadership to gather and distribute information. You figure that out themselves. And so they talk about this worked great, share the information. Somebody picked up that idea, they shared another information. So having them be collegial as well has been really, really good. So I hope that answers your question. Right on time. Thank you everybody for coming. Cards up front. Thank you for the virtual folks. Any questions? I'll be happy to take them. Jim offline. Guys, enjoy the rest of your conference.